To get whatever you want to, you have to become a skillful acquirer of livelihood to go further. The best adapted life forms on here in this environment, planet Earth, are also the ones who survived the best on here. And we humans also did indeed do something right, it seems. We are far away from this underlying reality of how things truly are. So making the connection back to our situation and how precious and mind-blowing it all is, to eat whatever we want to, when we want to, is hard to do. It's such an ethereal way back to the very beginnings of it all. A juxtaposition of something so ordinary, yet of biggest importance. Undoubtedly a long way from eating toast with questionable toppings on it. Where did this vast adventure start anyway? I want to take you on a trip to those very beginnings, because I believe it is time to do things right. We need to clear this cloudy sky seeded with doubt and ill intentions, organize this tumultuous song, and actually try to get an understanding of how, why, and what we should eat. What makes you sick? What makes you healthy? What are you doing that hinders you with that mission? What should we eat on a day-to-day basis? What does human food even look like? This will be an incredibly big task to do. So I want to preface this with saying that you shouldn't trust me blindly here. You should think critically about these things yourself. But I just can't stand here anymore and do nothing. Let these things happen the way they do. I always have and will do my best. And now also will do my best to paint a picture of what I think is going on and how and why this will give us the direction we should embark on. To clear up our now extremely chaotic modern way of thinking in regards to nutrition. And for that, I think we have to go back to where it all started. The beginning of life told us that life is a continuous reaction based on physics, chemistry, biology emerging from that. And that gives us the logic we need to practice to understand everything in relation to food. These cells began their long journey, probably about 4 billion years ago, in alkaline hydrothermal vents at the bottom of the seafloor. These cells were enabled by the conditions found there to, well, start existing. The physical and chemical composition of these alkaline vents enabled certain reactions to occur, and that created the first organic building blocks of life. They found to each other and kept on being fed by this motherly parent. Growth was possible. Life is based on proton gradients. Cells use proton gradients to do work. These protons move across a thin membrane, now through protein, and so could power work, like water a turbine could. Back then, this was done by the walls in this giant maze inside of the vent, with small clusters of iron that most likely were conductive, transferring protons and electrons onto carbon dioxide. The carbon base we creatures are all made of. More time and energy created ways that these cells could navel off from this motherly source and made the cascade of life possible that then grew into everything that followed. Stuff like phagocytosis, meaning to eat and cell, basically engulf and digest, was just another advance in that. The basis for eating as we know it. Fast forward a couple billion years, and now modern life uses oxygen as help to acquire the energy it needs to survive. To keep this reaction going, that once started in those very vents and went unbroken since then. Did you know that every life that now exists is an unbroken strain of those first processes back then? This is so mind-boggling. Oxygen is incredibly reactive. Unlike the doctor's office when you say you need an appointment. But oxygen is also used to burn up the materials found in the things we now engulf and digest to get what we need: energy. From the basic needs for survival to enabling the exceedingly complex processes in our body every day, eating gives us what we need. Every life on Earth is more or less built on the same building blocks, so everyone wants the energy to keep existing further. We creatures found a way to acquire the food we need to march on. The best one in doing that lived. The ones who couldn't keep up didn't. Be it through not being fast or strong enough, mechanical errors, or a comet that wiped out most of life on Earth at some point. The primary driver of evolution. Life indeed has changed, and we humans not always looked like this, like we look now in the 21st century. When you throw something down your chute to eat, a long chain of interlinked organs and processes start doing their thing. Our digestion starts doing its thing. It digests. And because we are built a certain way, with a certain history in the past, the path that was walked before us by every living creature originating from our ancestral vent home gives us a certain status quo, a certain situation to go off from, of how our body works and what functions with it or won't. Eating rocks like the early beginnings of our life is not really possible anymore, but through the eons we did eat what the planet had to offer us. Planetary ecosystem. Higher complex life made this their kingdom, eating everything from the ones trying to do the same or searching every nook and crevice in the environment for scraps to eat to give us the energy we need. Fauna followed flora. Sponges, considered by many to be the most primitive living animal, may date back to 750 million years ago. This long test of time gives us an approximate starting point of our physiology. Not wanting to go back that far, we have to start somewhere. And I think we should start looking at about 40 million years back in time. Dinosaurs died out some years ago, and mammals took hold on the lands. The doors for change open up. About 40 million years ago, we think the first prosimian primates started walking the face of the earth. Ancient relatives of every single one of us. 4 million years later, 36 million years ago from now on, the first monkeys came to be. Opposable thumbs, color vision and social behavior. About 25 million years ago, first apes with enlarged brains came into being. Even more monkeying around, and that stayed like that for quite some time. For 20 million years actually, we think. About 4.5 million years ago from now on, the first hominins started walking the face of the earth. Early humans. Say hello to your distant ancestors. What a journey they have behind them. With the rising hominins, we also made the motion downwards from our tree homes. The walk on 2 feet became common, and cool enough, a whole other world beyond our initial tree homes was on the horizon. Theories of why we had to descend ranged from simple habitat degradation to a changing landscape and climate to that other apes bullied us down from our joint life up in the trees. The better adapted one to a niche may win. Like we already discussed. Either way, we had to descend. Presumably, we were greeted by a territory that was a mixture of light jungle and far grasslands. The conquering stride over valleys and mountain ranges, with seashores and sandy deserts was accompanied by the upright walk to hold our heads high. With more input and challenge to our cognition, our brain started changing with every baby born. It became bigger and was fueled by the excitement of the new, the curiosity of wanting and needing to explore and survive. It is theorized that we had a diet consisting mostly of fruits, leaves, some nuts, seeds, bark, and some tubers, up when we are still swinging around from branch to branch. With our descent down, we switched to tropical grasses, sedges, and everything the new playground provided. We probably mostly were funny looking at the time, for that we were amidst of changing of our world forever. We were on the way to greatness. Have you ever seen a chimpanzee or a gorilla walking upright? Some say we never left those times. With times are changing, we also were on a new evolutionary path to excel on, to orientate anew, to find our would-be food niche. 2.6 million years ago, we think those adventurous guys first started using stone tools. A big leap. But not long after that, about 2 million years ago, the first real humans started using fire. Seems to have been the right path to take. Another adaptation to the changing environment. Yet one with an... I don't know how to put the sheer size and importance of that into words. The earth got significantly hotter and drier. Our brains grew even more, and this also in turn helped us be more inventive with what we were eating. The tinkering around with different food sources must have been tough and deadly. The world back then must have been full of unexplored potential food sources. Who knows where to start and what actually to eat in this situation. But for a food source to be worth it, you have to take great risks. The initial stages of acquiring it are extremely dangerous. You have to wield absolute caution when approaching it. For a modern example, nightshade.
This is one of the deadliest plants in the world. Eat just a handful of its berries and you'd be in real trouble. A favorite tool of kings, queens, and witches, this toxic plant lives up to its name. This is deadly nightshade. Just to give you an idea, in addition to its common name, the deadly nightshade, it's also been called the death cherry, the devil's berry, and the beautiful death.
And to be fair, it's fully deserved. This plant is insanely toxic.
It contains tropane alkaloids to defend itself from insects that try to eat it. But in vertebrates, those alkaloids affect the smooth muscles of the body, including the urinary and GI tracts and sweat glands.
In some cases, it can cause extreme dry mouth, hallucinations, delirium, and even death. Just 2 berries are enough to kill a child.
The roots are the most toxic part of the deadly nightshade, but a single leaf has enough poisonous alkaloids to kill an adult. The berries are slightly sweet, but if you eat more than a handful, you're in trouble.
Damn, I can't even imagine how they must have done it back then. Of course, the bodies of these early hominins were quite different to what we are currently building, but still. Could you imagine basing your choice of food on the perceived tastiness, on the palatability of these foods? Only on that? That sounds crazy. How do you do it? Tasting small amounts of food? Nibbling on the root and observing if you simply directly get explosive diarrhea or fall over and die? That is absolutely crazy to me. What is when you come across a bush like this with these sweet berries? They look tasty enough. In popular media, you often hear that meat made us human. But that doesn't seem to have been the case at all. Scavenging was what we could do, if that, and coping with the risks related to that, probably also not very well, and not very efficient food source. Yes, rotten alien meat inside of our bodies, the exquisite kitchen of raw nature itself, millions if not billions, trillions of bacteria on it, viruses or whatever you might find lingering on here back then. The competition from what roamed these plains we also idled our feet on was ferocious, literally. We maybe, probably, could sneak the rest of a kill left behind by one of these behemoths, or deploy tactics to scare them away by being loud, noisy and scary. You know, how scary one of these early humans could be at the time. Hard to imagine some archaic humans grunting and yelling at a big fucking cat and it backing off. Maybe this was just another indicator for how we mastered our environment. Archaeological evidence dating back to nearly 2 million years ago found butchered animal bones suddenly showing up in the records. Butchered, not hunted. We must have been terrible hunters at the beginning. I mean, look at them. Bones are also the only thing that could survive the test of time. Plants do not fossilize well. The oldest undisputed evidence for hunting dates to the early Pleistocene era, consistent with the emergence and early dispersal of Homo erectus about 1.7 million years ago. This means only now we were actually proactive and hunting. Only now it was worth it to go down this route, because raw meat usually is not something you want to eat, and hunting itself is also quite dangerous, with often meager payoff. We also would have competed with extremely large carnivores like saber-toothed tigers, which is a joke in itself. Them being even bigger than modern adult male lions? Nah. The actual contender which enabled us humans to become humans is something different. Our massive brains are also massively power hungry, and to feed it properly, we need the most efficient fuel you can get for it. Our brains primarily run on glucose, a form of energy found in starch-rich vegetables. And to enable this rapid brain growth, you need a lot of this efficient source of energy. Only when you have excess resources you can spare, you can invest in new things. Possible energy found in meat converted into energy for brain growth is... we don't even have to talk about that. Those starch-rich veggies on the other hand... yes. This niche of food also was largely uncontested, we now think. So it was the perfect risk to reward ratio for our yet very archaic looking hominins. My personal theory is that it all came together at that point, for that meat could have been a source for other things we needed. The mixture of that probably was or is the answer, with starch-rich sugars enabling our rapid brain growth. But, in result to our new ventures, even more happened in our bodies. Our digestive tracts shrunk and our brain grew even more. Even more change was afoot, all building on the evolutionary path of the prosimian tree-dwelling primates. Have you ever looked at yourself in the mirror before? Where's the first thing that comes to your mind? Probably not that you once were a fruit-eating monkey being home in a tree somewhere, right? Maybe we should start thinking like that again. We have teeth that come from being frugivore, posable thumbs, and color vision. All good indicators for a fruit-eating animal. From what we know to date, we ate a lot of plants, especially back in those ancestral tree homes. Do you know why we can cope with alcohol these days? We developed an enzyme somewhere along that path between those very trees. Fermenting fruit on the bottom of the forest naturally contained it, so eating those and not dying from it seems like a valuable adaptation to have. But the biggest one, the opossum of millions of years of evolution before that, the most important one, the most crucial one that is yet to see the face of the savannah, that ignited a light in midst of us to shine back into the never-ending darkness. Do you know what it is? Fire. An element we see as wild, destructive and chaotic. An element that can end whole stretches of land in one single burn. Yet here we are, right here in front of it, and not being harmed by it. We tamed fire, nature itself, or at least tried to control it. I can't imagine everything that happened while attempting this dance with this deadly force of nature. But in the mind of a stone tool wielding ape, this discovery must have been so tremendous that no matter what, we tried to get in unison with it. The first sources of fire, what were they? Open cauldrons of lava, trees struck by lightning, or were fire salamanders the first pocket lighters of the past? I don't know. But later on, chipping two stones together that then created a spark, that then ignited some grass, did the trick. Who would have thought that chucking in whatever you found into these very dangerous flames creates food? Something that isn't edible then becomes edible. It must have been an incredibly large effort to cross this barrier. Another long story of trial and error. A pitch-perfect line of the song of the eons. Potential lies where danger lurks. This is also why I think the first undisputed evidence of hunting is after the discovery of fire. Well, throwing food into the fire and then letting it simmer. Do you know what this is called? Exactly! Cooking! The human became the cooking animal. The cookivore. I don't think that any mind back then was ready of how fundamental of a shift and direction this was, or was going to be. You see, the physiology of animals is based on the food niche they adapted to. For example, if you can perfectly digest plants, quench out every little bit of energy and nutrition out of it, then you will survive better than those who can't. All living beings changed because of this concept. From bear don't care, eat everything in their path, elephants eating each other's poop to get certain things, microbes, or parasites that eat fish's tongue to then become the fish's tongue to then leak nutrients out of their bloodstream. What the fuck?
Holy Jesus! What is that?
Your body and organs adapt to the foods you eat. You can eat whatever food your body enables you to eat. A positive feedback loop occurs and things change. Those who can't keep up with that are outcompeted by those who can. We were adapted great to the previous requirements the world threw at us back then. But with the earth changing, we also did. The long march from literally the beginning of the planet to up about 200,000 years ago, where this path started creating us.